Hello everybody out there in YouTube land, and welcome to DC Fans United. So I'd been thinking about doing a video like this for a while. I just kind of wanted to find a good month to talk about it. So I always find the comic book industry as a whole really interesting, and am always interested to see how well it's doing and whether it's growing or in decline. So this month we got some kind of mixed numbers overall, which I thought made it a really interesting month to look at. So I'm going to go off of Comicron.com's monthly comic sales for October 2018, and I'll put a link to that in the description box so you can check it out for yourself. First of all, I want to run through the top 5 titles. So Batman issue 56 was the #1 best-selling book, and number 2, the second best-selling book, was kind of a big win for Image Comics, was The Walking Dead. So this was a #1 15th anniversary book, so it's kind of a special one, but that actually sold over 100,000. Spider-Geddon, which was also a #1 and from Marvel, was the 3rd place book, and those were the only 3 to sell over 100,000 copies. So I thought that was kind of weak. Batman number 57 actually didn't break 100,000 with just over 95,000, and then Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider rounds out the top 5. So another reason I thought this was a good month was because it seems pretty representative of the overall sales numbers, especially when you look at the top 5. You have 2 from DC, 2 from Marvel, and 1 from Image, so that's essentially the big 3, and I thought really a good representation of where the market is overall. So one thing that Comicron talks about is that October ended ahead for the year to date thanks to one additional new comic book day during the month. So one thing that was really notable about this too was while the top 10 or so books didn't sell as much as they often do, the middle placing books apparently did better than normal. The 150th place best-selling book was the 3rd highest for any time in 20 years. The 200th place book was the 4th highest in over 20 years, and the 500th place was up 122%. So I kind of think the big story to take away from this month is that maybe people are looking down the line, so to speak, looking for titles they aren't as familiar with, especially with the Batman 57 not breaking 100,000 units. It seems like people are maybe looking for indie books or titles they aren't as familiar with, which shows better sales for titles that are not normally seeing such good sales. With that in mind, there's definitely a lot of books that aren't selling that well when you look down the line, and even though they're increasing, once you get down to looks like the 200th title is down to 12,000 units. So it's pretty interesting overall. One thing that is really interesting to me too is the year-to-date numbers are really good as far as dollars. So let's see. Comics dollar sales. So the top 300 comics sold a total retail price of $29.45 million. So that's 8% more than the previous year, 2% more from the same month 5 years ago, 18% more than 10 years ago, 37% more than 15 years ago, and 57% more than 20 years ago. So every single one of those shows a profit, and profit increasing. So what I thought was really interesting though is if you look at the amount of units, the overall comics that sold, it was 7.23 million copies. So that was 3% more than last year, but it was 7% less than the year before. 5 years ago. It was 4% less than 10 years ago, 2% less than 15 years ago, and 2% more than 20 years ago. So overall, that's a much more negative number. In fact, if you add those up, you've got about minus 8%, whereas the dollars were over 100% increase. So what this shows to me is that they are charging more for comics to such a great extent that they can sell significantly less of them and actually make a huge profit and increase the amount of money they've been making. So that's probably why we aren't seeing much reason for the big 2 to really change things or shake things up. We always look at the units that they've sold, and those are pretty steadily in decline, although there are some numbers there, especially the ones further down. You know, you get below the top 100 and some of those are a lot better than you would expect. So I found that to be pretty interesting, that they can sell less units and still make more money. So I think that, and the lower placing books selling better than expected are the two big things to take away from this. Another thing I thought that made this month a good one to look at is there weren't too many huge events. There is Heroes in Crisis, which I don't know if you could count that as an event, and there was Spider-Geddon, so I guess there were a couple little things, but it's not like many months where there's a top book that sold 3 or 4 or 500,000 because it's Action Comics 1000 or Amazing Spider-Man 800 or something like that. There wasn't anything really huge. I suppose the Walking Dead taking second place with their 15th anniversary book is probably the big success story. I'm sure Image is real thrilled with that. So overall, I thought it was pretty interesting. Definitely check out the link in the description if you want to look at the numbers for yourself. They actually list the entire top 500 selling comic books right now. It used to only be the top 300, so pretty cool. Alright, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments what you think about the comic book industry. Do you think it's healthy? Do you think it's, well, I think it's in decline pretty clearly just by looking at the unit sales going down, and I think over time they're going to have to look at something else to improve things. But at the same time, some of the numbers were not nearly as dire as I expected. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the bell for notifications. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. And as always, thank you for watching and being a part of DC Fans United.
End of line.